Euromaxx highlights. Coming up in today's show. Floating homes. Spectacular houseboats are creating a stir in Hamburg. Hot shots. Why German designers shoot cocktails with an air gun. And Cappuccino Kid. Euromaxx reporter Hendrik Welling learns how to make perfect coffee. Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Karin Helmstedt.
And a warm welcome to our highlights edition. Well, in Amsterdam and London, so-called floating homes are very popular, and now the German port city of Hamburg is following suit and starting to make use of some of the space on its many waterways. In 2006, the city held a competition to design floating homes to be built on a canal there. Well, the 10 winners were given the requisite planning permission, and now some of those houses are finished. Our reporter took a look at a waterside settlement.
Exceptional architecture that floats. This futuristically designed houseboat, covered entirely in metal, is used as an architect's office. Each of these 5 houseboats on the Elbe canal in the middle of Hamburg was designed by a different architect. It's Germany's first design houseboat settlement. Amelie Rost and Jörg Niederehe own this floating wooden house. The 2 architects designed their new home themselves and, just like their neighbors, convinced a panel of judges of their plans.
We wanted it to look like a boat. The motto was houseboats, and we wanted to keep the mixture as recognizable as possible, so it's not just a floating house. That's why we have these curves and have kept the dynamic of a ship. And the upper story is set back, which allows us to surround it with a railing.
We both come from Bavaria. We came here to be closer to the sea, closer to water. And then we had this opportunity to take part in the houseboat competition. It was like a dream come true.
The houseboat has 2 stories. The living space is on the lower floor, 40 centimeters under the waterline. The pontoons under the house are fixed on steel pillars, so the current doesn't carry the house and its occupants down the canal.
At first there was quite a lot of creaking, and I couldn't figure out where the noise was coming from. So I went up every night with a flashlight to see if someone was there. Then I realized it was the gangway that was creaking, and now it doesn't bother me anymore.
A house is normally anchored securely to the ground. Here you feel the influence of nature. If the weather is bad, it moves, and the boat starts creaking.
Hamburg is leading the way here in Germany when it comes to living on the water. Down in the city's harbor, this floating house provoked an uproar when it was built 4 years ago. This new container construction is the largest floating office building in Germany. When the city of Hamburg opened the competition for 10 mooring spots for houseboats in the Elbe Canal, there were more than 80 applicants. Some of the entries were classic and similar to boats. With other designs, it was difficult to see how people were supposed to live in them. A panel of judges chose the best designs and awarded them planning permission. The panel was chaired by Jürgen Böge.
There was a broad spectrum, and it was a lot of fun. What was especially interesting about it was that we had to decide on a type of construction that didn't really exist before. The term houseboat can be misunderstood in this context. It's much more about floating homes, as people say nowadays.
Construction has started on 4 more floating homes just a few hundred meters from the original settlement. The first boat will be metal-clad. It cost 400,000 euros. A wooden house is being built next door. Its residents are also in the trade. Maren Feind is an architect. Her husband is a construction engineer. They'll be moving into their floating home in just a few weeks' time.
A houseboat is a real dream for us. We always had the idea of owning our own house or apartment, but we didn't want to have to move out of Hamburg. And then we had the possibility of buying a houseboat. It's our own home and allows us to live in the city.
Everything that floats in Hamburg has to comply with water laws, so the complex planning application system on land does not apply here, and the owners were free to experiment.
We've definitely built our dream house on the water.
You're a lot closer to nature, that's clear. You notice a lot more. Every kind of weather, strong winds, or if the canal freezes, that's very different.
The floating homes on the Elbe canal. In the middle of Hamburg, yet close to nature, the houseboats of the future.
Gorgeous. Well, summer has finally arrived in much of Germany, and what better way to end a hot, sultry day than with an ice-cold cocktail. Now, there are dozens of books on the market to advise you on the best recipes, the proper glasses to use, and, of course, the proper mixing techniques. But now there's a brand new book out by two young graphic designers from Lake Constance that's something of a radical departure from the rest, as their approach to cocktails is downright explosive.
Some are shaken, some are stirred, but each of these cocktails has bitten the bullet. They've all been shot by an air gun, which splinters the glasses and splatters the cocktails inside. "60 destroyed cocktails feature in this new photo album called Zielwasser.
Initially, we understand destroyed to mean something negative or ugly. But as you can see in the pictures, it can also be something absolutely beautiful, when sometimes the delicate spray is captured, or the swirls of water, when you really see it clearly. These are things that the naked eye normally can't see.
Miriam Oehlmeier and Annika Krause love finding new ways of looking at familiar things. They set up their design office a year and a half ago in the southern German town of Constance and can already make a living from their commissions. The clients appreciate their continual search for new approaches and themes. The book Hirnreißend depicts the world of people who have neurological disorders. Miriam Oehlmeier and Annika Krause have found unusual ways of explaining them.
You might think it's a very boring topic, where you simply think, oh, that's going to be really difficult. And so the challenge is especially high to do something different and to find a way of extracting everything you can from the topic.
Or you create something unexpected that shocks people at first.
Completing their cocktail book was another tough challenge. At first, they experimented with explosives, a hammer, and then finally with an air gun. They wanted their photos to capture the precise moment of destruction.
For example, we had a meringue, which looked very cute somehow. And it looked really beautiful when it was ruined, because it really became interesting when you destroyed it.
It produces something different, and you can't really control it completely. There's always a surprise when something jumps off or flies away.
They ultimately discovered that a glass filled with liquid can be especially impressive when shot to pieces. That's when they decided to photograph exploding cocktails. But first, they had to get used to handling the gun.
When we first bought it, neither one of us wanted to take it home. We were afraid of it.
We quarreled over who ought to take it home, but now it's just a normal object that we use to create the photos. We've grown used to it.
The cocktails are shot in a completely darkened room. A split-second flash illuminates the scene when the shot hits the glass. This makes it possible to capture the moment when the glass shatters.
It struck me that every person sees something different in it. The cocktail takes on a completely different form at this moment. And people see things. First liquid splashing around, and then suddenly other images.
Sometimes they really take on personalities. We've noticed that people say, oh, that's a likable cocktail, or that one looks aggressive. So it's really the case that they take on a life of their own.
After a hard day's shooting, Miriam Erlmeyer and Annika Krause like to relax with a view of Lake Constance and a few cocktails.
And now it's over to the French capital, Paris, for the Men's Fashion Week and to meet a young man who seems to do very little relaxing. Henrik Vibskov of Copenhagen is the only Scandinavian designer on the program in Paris this time, and he's a man of many different personas. He likes to let his brain go through its messy journeys, and those journeys take him from visual art to fashion to music and just about everywhere in between.
When Henrik Vibskov presents a new collection, the runway is transformed into a stage. His shows are like performance art. This time, Vibskov wanted to paint a post-apocalyptic backdrop.
Something has happened, and like going into that kind of atmosphere, trying to create this brown, muddy, kind of rusty, and some passengers which are returning from some kind of experience which is maybe a little bit dramatic.
A fashion extravaganza in a school courtyard. Henrik Vibskov is used to flaunting his dramatic flair in such locations. Every show has a different motto, like the Human Laundry Service in 2007 or the Fantabulous Bicycle Music Factory 2 years ago.
I think in general it's kind of this making a whole universe, creating this picture, also to entertain people, you know? And it's also about entertaining.
Henrik Vibskov hates being bored, so he does everything from designing baby strollers to playing drums in the Danish band Trenta Møller. He's also very active in the arts scene. His work regularly appears in museums, like in the Palais de Tokyo in Paris.
I wouldn't only do fashion. I think I need to have this element of doing like work with other things, music and films and stuff. Also, just to not like keep myself running. Also, just be like, okay, let's do a red cardigan. Let's do black trousers.
This season, Vibskov is joined on the cutting edge of fashion by French designer Alexis Mabille, who recently turned a church aisle into her runway. And iconic designer Jean-Paul Gaultier, who presented his latest looks in a Moroccan hammam.
The show should really be something special because it's all artificial anyways. Nobody actually walks down the street wearing those clothes. There's lights and cameras and it's a real show, so we should present it that way too.
So what are the hottest runway trends? Gaultier's show features pieces where East meets West, using bold patterns and prints. That also found their way into the Louis Vuitton show, as well as Henrik Vibskov's.
Fashion-wise, trying to do some prints which are like inspired by nature. Some of them a little bit leopard, animal printed. and then trying to mix it up with some classic elements from more like, like the classic shoe elements that you normally put inside the shoe.
German actor Daniel Brühl was among the celebrity audience at Vibskov's show. The Danish designer show was a highlight of this year's Men's Fashion Week in Paris.
When people talk about fashion merging with art, it's a perfect example. Yeah, I love it. It's more modern.
Meanwhile, Henrik Vibskov is already coming up with other ways to surprise his audience next time around.
Well, rather than far-out fashions, the very best in coffee was of the essence in London this past week at the 11th Barista World Championships. That's where coffee bar professionals from 52 nations congregated for 3 days to see who could serve up the best espresso, the best cappuccino, and also some original creations. Well, in the end, American Michael Phillips, that's him in the green T-shirt, took top honors as the best barista. The competition in London was a little bit stiff, but we thought we could certainly do with a perfect coffee now and again right here at the broadcaster in Berlin. So we sent our reporter Hendrik Welling to get some instruction from the experts in Italy's coffee capital, Trieste.
Italians love to argue about the right way to make espresso. The baristas here are secretive, but our reporter Hendrik Welling is determined to find out more. He's headed to the city of Trieste in northeast Italy, where the locals drink twice as much coffee as anywhere else in the country. His first lesson?
For me, coffee has always been just about getting ready for the day with my daily dose of caffeine. But now I've realized that not all coffee is the same. And after tasting this one here, I have decided that I have to learn to make coffee like this for myself.
And this is just the place to start. The city's port once made it an important trading center for coffee beans, and its most famous roasting facility even offers courses in how to make the beverage. Director Moreno Faina has his own views about the perfect espresso.
Why is the barista so important for the taste of the espresso?
Oh, you are touching a very delicate point, because barista is crucial in order to obtain the perfection in espresso extraction. 50% of the final result, speaking about an espresso cup, is given by the blend. But the other 50% is given by the tools, espresso machine and grinders, and mainly from the barista.
So professionals need quite a bit of background knowledge. Theory is at the top of the syllabus. Hendrik first has to learn everything there is to know about beans, how they're roasted, and grinding methods and technology. It's a grind, but at the end, he feels ready to tackle the task.
Whoa, for more than 3 hours I've been taught everything about coffee and its preparation. In theory, I should now be able to make the perfect espresso or cappuccino. But let's see if I can put the theory into practice.
6 different factors play key roles. The optimal grind differs from bean to bean and is even influenced by humidity levels in the room. 7 grams of coffee are the right amount for the perfect cup, with water at 92 degrees Celsius forced with 9 bars of pressure through the ground coffee. This has to be gently pressed into the filter. The brewing process should last exactly 30 seconds.
So this is the official espresso machine for the World Barista Championships, and I'm going to make my first perfect espresso with this machine. Okay, let's go.
When the settings are correct, the rest isn't too complicated. The 4-day course that turns Hendrik into a master barista is only the beginning. He would need at least 2 years of practical experience to really earn the title.
Now we can control the crema, the color of crema. They look like a tiger skin on the top. This is most important. Compliments.
Looks aside, it's the taste that counts.
Good. Very good. Yes. It's difficult to make a perfect espresso because if you lose one rule, you don't make a perfect cup.
Presentation is also important when it comes to a good cappuccino. After making a perfect espresso, it's time to get to work foaming up some fresh milk. So far, so good.
Start in the middle, now go down and close.
Okay, perfect. But I have to...
Now it's Hendrik's turn to try. And it seems it's a little more difficult than Michaela made it look. The final attempt isn't much better than his first. Well, maybe it looks a little like a heart?
Well, what I found out today is that the biggest barrier to making a perfect espresso or cappuccino is me. I did my best, but I'm afraid there are certain skills a good barista needs. You need a certain flair and a lot of experience.
Hendrik has learned that there's a lot that goes into making a perfect espresso or cappuccino, and so he'll leave it up to the professionals.
What a shame, what a shame, what a shame. I was so looking forward to Hendrik's return, but it looks like we'll have to wait a little bit longer till we get that perfect cappuccino right here in-house. Well, to finish off, we'll get a little wind behind us at the biggest sailing regatta in the world, the annual Kiel Week in northern Germany. Now, that's the perfect place to mingle with the crème de la crème, pun intended, of the sailing world. This time, it's also a feast for the eyes of Marina Könitzer of Berlin, who, as a professional sailing photographer, can always be found right where the action is.
Bracing winds and adrenaline highs, that's what Kiel Week is all about. 2 hours earlier, back in the harbor, professional photographer Marina Könitzer has been taking pictures of the world's main sailing events since 2002. She's expecting to get some great shots here in Kiel, a regatta attended by the international sailing elite.
The first day is always exciting. Thankfully, there's plenty of wind, even though the forecast said there wouldn't be. The participants are getting ready. There's lots of excitement in the air. It's fantastic.
The first to set sail today are the Olympic classes, 650 sailors in all. Marina Könitzer is an expert on the international sailing scene, and it doesn't take her long to identify her first motifs. Most of today's yachtsmen and women are competitive athletes who'll be taking part in the next Olympics. After days of preparation, they're ready for some action.
Now all we need to do is prepare ourselves mentally, and then to set our course, check the wind, see where it's coming from, and then settle down and get used to the waves. Then we're off.
5,000 participants from all over the world will be sailing at this year's Kiel Week in 26 different categories. This isn't a world championship, it's a showcase event, not a competition, and an opportunity for yachtsmen and women to demonstrate their skills. It's also a chance for professionals and amateurs to test themselves against others at the top of their game.
Kiel Week is the biggest sailing event in the world and part of the Sailing World Cup. We have the world's top sailing elite here. But we also have a lot of sailing enthusiasts who come along. Everyone gets to mix with everyone else. You can talk to the stars.
Within a few minutes, everyone is out on the water. Marina Könitzer stands on the jetty to follow the action. The races take place several kilometers off the coast. The water temperature is just 13 degrees Celsius and there's a chilly wind. But it's great conditions for sailing. And for Marina Könitzer.
What makes a good sailing photo? You need as much action as possible, water spray, and of course it's good if you can see people's faces. It's not always possible, but lots of spray helps at least.
The race gets underway. The boats sail side by side. They're divided into several different categories. Marina Könitzer is in her element. She sailed herself for many years and is still passionate about the sport.
I was out sailing before I was even born, so it's in my blood, so to speak. My father also sailed in regattas, so it's in the family.
A good 5 hours later, she heads back to the coast. Marina Krnitsa has taken some 2,000 photos, and Kiel Week has only just begun.
And this show has come to an end. That brings us to the end of another edition of our highlights. But just before we go, a quick reminder that you can find all of those stories and lots more online. Just go to YouTube and type in Deutsche Welle English. That's all one word. And that's all we have for this time. So, tschüss and auf Wiedersehen. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.